Yeah, no, it's usually from work, and even when we're going to the San Jose office, so that's just right down First Street as well. So from that perspective, it's very convenient. If I'm in the office.
How are you doing? It's good to see you. Welcome back.
Probably. Now I'm going to be sitting right here. That way I could just.
And wait, do we have a microphone for that? Or when,
Yeah.
we join the two, then we want to.
Lucky you. Oh,
Hi, Teresa.
hi. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
We're neighbors now.
I was asking,
Will we always neighbors?
did I get in trouble or something? Did they put me
Listen,
right
I'm
next to
very
you so
cool.
you can elbow me when I'm doing something wrong?
Hey, behave. Well, I didn't bring my glasses. That's not good. Is it
Testing,
on?
testing,
Okay, so
check, check, testing, testing, check, check, testing, testing, check.
Oh, the hot mic.
Test.
I have
Mic
no
test.
confidences anyway. But I'll say I don't care if you're
Budget. Now
And
you
stuff.
feel confident that we know what we're doing?
I was confident about that before, so. So it was a good.
Howdy, how are you today?
Quiet.
No, really, because.
Good. So far, I mean, Steph.
Nobody's pushing back. Highlights, not.
Boom, boom,
We
boom.
did
Yeah.
highlights. It's in your folder. This is on your folder. Highlights. The board meetings lasted 30. That's way bigger than all this.
Come from our city hall.
So.
Oh,
One can see you doing this.
oh, okay. All right, thank you.
And I want to know what you guys were thinking about.
We were agreeing with you, but it didn't sound like it.
But that's the thing. But you have to.
You don't know. You're reacting to. Okay, awesome. I don't remember saying anything that was happening.
I didn't think it was funny.
Yeah. But, all right. Well, know that it's there.
Yeah, I think in general, all these. We're not doing everybody any service. Hey, boss. Awesome. Awesome. As I said, man, it all starts with the money.
Benjamin's.
That's what it is. I need to remember to tell Cindy today when we're walking out here, and I want to be on that.
As soon as I get up the energy to stand, I'll move.
Right there.
Back and it's very sexy. I know, I know.
Okay. See, you guys can say that.
Oh, yeah, you
I got nothing.
No, you can't go there.
In the world of today, women can get away with so much more.
Yeah, you can't go there.
I'm like, no,
Okay, so this is, you have this, so you know where everybody's seated?
no, I don't. But I
Oh,
don't.
maybe I have.
But I'm okay. I don't need to know. How you doing, sir?
We don't get to sit next to you very often. Well, you get to our last committee.
So I was thinking of going to your fundraiser on Sunday, but
I don't know how much you really want me to
I'm supposed to sit where I'm sitting. After that,
So
I
you-
kind of don't care.
I like you.
I like you.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, if I can have your endorsement.
Of course you can. Yes, I mean, we all realize the RDA proceedings are property, but
That's what I'm just saying. The same
if you'll have me, I would love to go.
That would be great. That would be lovely. I appreciate it. Thank you. I didn't think of it.
Hey, how are you?
Yes, thank you.
Thinking of running
Baker's
against you.
Hello, how are you?
That looks like I have
Life is fantastic.
All right. So we have quorum, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So I'm actually on my sabbatical
Yeah.
right now.
Which is good for a 2/3 vote.
Well, it's I'm doing a little bit non-traditional one.
Okay.
My family time is so my sabbatical started on Monday. On Monday, I took my wife and daughter to the airport. They're in Europe right now for 10 days. Well, mostly because I wasn't invited.
And I said,
I mean, because my wife went.
I know like the language is natural.
Yeah.
what I need.
Is she having for her
And then she told me after the
And then I have a card, another friend of mine.
I don't want to be the after.
He's, he was on one of our charter reviews for Southeast Asia, 5 years ago. And so he supposedly told some folks that he didn't like that I kept.
Check that list I sent you. You check that everything.
Should I just recuse on the safe side?
And he ran against Pat Kolstad last time.
Let's see how many people they have. Like, yeah, I mean, because the thing is
Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin. Thank you all very, very much for joining us for our VTA Board of Directors meeting. And I would like to remind everybody, if I'm not doing it myself, to speak clearly into the mic. And thank you for accommodating us in this other room. We really, really appreciate it. So may I ask for a roll call, please?
Board Member Baker. Here. Alternate Board Member Carr. Here. Board Member Carrasco. Alternate Board Member Cortese. Alternate Board Member Esteves. Here. Board Member Hendricks.
Present.
Board Member Herrera. Board Member Camis. Board Member Licpardo.
Present.
Alternate Board Member McAllister. Present. Alternate Board Member Miller. Here. Board Member Nguyen.
here.
Board Member O'Neill.
Here?
Alternate Board Member Perales. Board Member Woodward. Here. Board Member Yeager.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Bruins. Chairperson Chavez.
Well, I'm here.
Have a quorum.
I've got the mic. All right, everyone. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first order of business is to our orders of the day. And are there any recommendations to change any orders on the agenda? None from my colleagues. Any from staff? Can we get a motion to approve orders of the day? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that passes. We're going to move to item 2, and this is our awards and commendations. This next item on our agenda is for the first quarter, item 2.1, employees and supervisors of the quarter. And Ibrahim Fukriru, I'm sorry, I didn't say your last name properly, did I? Kira? Oh, excellent. All right. Well, you're going to read the biographies of the awardees. And I wanted to just make mention of this. This is really an important thing. So if families want to come up and take pictures or you want to be in pictures, just come on up. This is really a celebration of all of our employees, and you all do an amazing, amazing job. We don't get a chance to thank you enough. This is really a celebration for you. So come on forward and make yourselves at home.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure this evening to announce the employees of the third quarter. Our first honoree is Susan Emery. Susan.
Bring up the banner.
Susan Emery, Office and Timekeeping Technician at Northyard Operations, is the Administration Award winner for the third quarter. Since the day Susan joined VTA in 1981, she has been dependable, efficient, and unfailingly punctual. This excellent work ethic has had a great influence on the people around her by motivating them to meet and exceed the office goals. She projects a warm, cheerful attitude to all of the operators who come in with questions or concerns. Susan always displays the utmost professionalism and follow-through, both with customers and fellow employees, even when faced with conflicts and difficult situations. Congratulations to Susan Emery, Administration Employee of the third quarter. Our next honoree is Nelson Souza. Nelson Souza, transit mechanic at Shibuya Maintenance, is the Maintenance Award winner for the third quarter. This month marks his 4-year anniversary working with VTA, and he has maintained a high level of professionalism and work performance from his first day. He always maintains a proactive and positive attitude, and he frequently helps his coworkers by showing them what he has learned throughout his career as a mechanic. He takes it upon himself to research problems outside of work hours in order to consistently meet the high standards he has set for himself. He is a great example of what a good leader is made of. Congratulations to Nelson Souza, Maintenance Employee of the third quarter. Our final honoree this evening for the third quarter is Shannon Arms.
You guys will have to come up here for the pictures, okay?
Yeah.
Shannon Arms, Transit Division Supervisor at Shibuya Operations is the Supervisory Award winner for the third quarter. During her 20-year tenure as a Transit Division Supervisor, Shannon has become one of the premier division supervisors at VTA. The leadership skills Shannon displays and her dedication to excellence are truly prodigious. These traits are reflected in her motivation to work tremendously long hours, far beyond those for which she is compensated by VTA. By demonstrating a genuine care for operators while at the same time enforcing VTA policies and procedures, Shannon is an excellent example of what a supervisor should be. Every VTA employee should aspire to be like her. Congratulations to Shannon Arms, Supervisor of the third quarter.
Before you guys leave, hang on a second. Hold on a second. Can we have the groupies come up and join the picture here? Come on, we got to have the fan club. Come on, guys. Come on. We saw you. Come on. Come on, come on.
Now understand. They're scared.
You can hide behind your little faces. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yay!
What are you? There's more of them.
Look at they have the little faces. I know.
She had like a whole bunch of groupies out there.
Adorable.
I just hope the rest of our meeting keeps this happy-go-lucky attitude.
I don't know.
Congratulations to our employees and supervisor of the quarter, and for their fan clubs. Thank you for coming out. Do you have another one?
Yeah, I'd also just like to recognize Lakbir Singh. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it this evening, but he is a coach operator at Shibuya Operations, and he's the Operations Award winner for the third quarter.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 2.2, the recognition of sheriff deputies. And if I could have the sheriff deputies come up, Cody Cogliandro, Andrew Galaves, John Rizquala. We're recognizing these three sheriff deputies for their life-saving actions. On May 26, 2016, Transit Patrol deputies Rizquala and Cogliandro were working a plainclothes assignment at the Alum Rock Light Rail Station, while Deputy Galaves was working patrol in the East San Jose area. These deputies were notified of a teen in the act of committing suicide. The deputies promptly responded to locate the teen and stop the suicide attempt. Their quick response on the scene saved the life of this teen. The board applauds the tragedy of suicide. Thank you for your heroic and life-saving actions. Let's give them a round of applause. Wait, no, stay there, Cindy. You're not done yet. Okay, that takes us to item 2.3. Cristo Reyes High School serves disadvantaged inner-city youth from the east side of San Jose. The students participate in a full course load of college preparatory courses in addition to a 1 day per week work assignment, which funds the majority of their annual tuition. VTA began the partnership with them in September of 2014. 3 freshman students and 1 sophomore high school student participated in the program this past school year, and they worked at different departments throughout VTA. We have certificates to present to these students, so may I call the following to join the chair and general manager. Jonathan Rubio, Del Ruiz, Maritza Flores, Alfredo Valencia. Okay, I think Alfredo could not join us tonight. Our staff worked, and okay, family members, come on up. Our staff worked and mentored these students to give them valuable work experience that can help them later in life. Alfredo worked in the Service and Operations Planning Department, while Jonathan worked in the Benefits Department. Michelle in the Contracts Administration, and Maritza worked in Community Engagement. Let's give them a round of applause. All right. Moving on to item 2.4, we're going to recognize one of our community partners. City Year San Jose/Silicon Valley is an education-focused organization dedicated to helping students from high-poverty communities graduate. The organization trains and deploys young adult AmeriCorps members to mentor and support students who are at risk of dropping out and help them stay on track to graduation. VTA has supported City Year San Jose/Silicon Valley by providing AmeriCorps members with monthly VTA passes. In return, City Year members serve as ambassadors for VTA. Tonight, we recognize them for their efforts to increase graduation rates in high-poverty communities and for their partnership with VTA. Carly Brown, City Year San Jose Development Operations Coordinator, is here to accept the recognition. And last in our recognition, we have recognition of VTA's sustainability team for their contribution to VTA's achievement of gold level in the American Public Transportation Association Sustainability Commitment Program. VTA accomplished the gold level by achieving up to 10% reduction in energy, water, waste, and greenhouse gases. In the case of facility, energy use, water, and waste, VTA reduced by more than 10%. In California, only 4 transit agencies, including us, have achieved this recognition at this level or higher. May I call on the following to join our chair and the general manager: Inez Evans, Christina Jaworski, Lanny Ho, Saberwhale, Hanoun, Tom Fitzwater, John Risto, Mark DeLong, Bob Victor, Hassan Basma, Raj Sadev, Ann Kalnan. In addition, let me name a couple of other people who are not here with us tonight, but are also part of this team. Tracy Casimiro, Casey Emoto, Lindsay Fuji, Robert Ferber, Carly Hutchinson, Kathleen Pedrasky, Heidi Samuels, Jesse Soto, Kendall Whitson. Let's give them a round of applause.
Let's have another round of applause for all of our awardees. They just did fantastic, fantastic work. The items on our agenda actually addresses the very last group of people who we just saw that were focused on sustainability, and we'll get a chance to talk about that. But the amount of work that they got accomplished is incredible, and if you haven't had a chance to look at the report in our packet, it's great. And the reason I asked them to put this up is the accomplishments of this team are just really, really incredible. So for all that, I mean, just really, really good work. And it's something that all of us can take back to our cities and county. I felt like this was just such a really well done report. So this is the item that we're going to be discussing is 6.8. And I wanted to just give a couple of stats. Compared to 2008's baseline, we reduced water usage by nearly 39%. Since 2008, VTA realized an impressive 57% reduction in waste consumption production and 27% increase in recycling rates. And in 2015, we saved approximately $350,000 through our sustainability efforts. Let's give the staff one more round of applause. Now moving to item 3, and this is public comment. And so you will get an opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. And we have a microphone right here. I was going to say podium. So I'm going to invite up John Rainville and Pete Silva. And welcome. And you can come right up to this mic right here, and the staff will let you know when your 2 minutes are up. But please welcome.
Thank you. Actually, I didn't put one comment I put on there. It's a suggestion. Of course, that's what I always do. I don't come here to complain like most people do. But my suggestion is maybe getting I know you guys are affiliated with Highway 17 Express, but you guys are not really affiliated with them because I know it's a different. They're in Santa Cruz County and we're in Santa Clara County, but maybe you could talk to whoever you need to talk to in Santa Cruz County is probably getting like a Clipper card reader on the Highway 17 Express, because not just myself, but I know a lot of other people want to use Highway 17 Express better than driving to Santa Cruz. So maybe try to talk to somebody about getting a Clipper reader on their buses. And also, I understand that there's going to be some changes on routes due to BART coming down here and hopefully next month, cross our fingers, or whatever it's supposed to be, 2018, 19, 2020, somewhere around there. But, thank you. 27, okay, so it is next year then. Okay, anyway. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the 180, but I understand now it's going from Aborn to the Great Mall, then to BART right now as we speak. But I heard that they are going to totally discontinue the 180 going from Aborn Road to Fremont or something like that. Am I correct on this?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have staff respond to you. We're going to take one more comment, and then we'll have staff just respond quickly to your feedback. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Pete Silva. I live in Campbell, and I am really seeking your assistance in trying to put a barrier over the railroad crossing on Highway 17 coming into Campbell. It would be coming north into Campbell. I have, for the last 2 years, I have been after the representatives of VTA to correct the graffiti that is on that overcrossing. It took 6 months in order for that to be cleaned up, starting from March of last year when I made a complaint until September. In September it was cleaned up. Within a month it was tagged again. I have called VTA regarding putting up a barrier so that people do not get access to it. I was told that the cleanup would take place every 6 months. I think that it's a waste of money and time, and I'm coming to you basically because I'm not too sure whether the staff realizes that maybe they should be able to put a barrier there so that that tagging won't continue to take place. So you're sort of my last resort to try to get something through because I think that way there will not be the continuing closing of Highway 17 to get painting crews up there. And it should be accomplished just like the one that was done over 680 or 280. To me, that is the way to go. And I'm just asking for your support in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. And we're going to ask Patrick. Where's Patrick? There you go. Patrick's going to have a conversation with you right now. And then just to address, I'm going to ask Nuria just to address that one comment or question. So that staff person there will introduce himself to you, and we'll have a strategy. And I'll start talking, bad-mouthing the railroads when we get to another part of the agenda. So here you go.
Thank you. Just to address any changes related to our bus service or rail as a result of the revenue service of BART coming into Santa Clara County will be presented at the transit CPNO, the Transit Planning and Operations Planning, in addition to the board meeting. But if the gentleman who raised the questions, if you could see Inez Evans, she will give you. But we do intend on bringing all of the service changes related to the opening of BART just to show how our service and the BART operations are going to be working in sync.
Thank you, Inez. We're now going to move to item 4.1, and this is a resolution of necessity. Adoption is to close the public hearing and so I'm going to just let Ron walk us through this presentation. Yeah, that's all right. So, Ron, do you mind? All right.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. I'm Ron Golem, Deputy Director for Real Estate and Joint Development. Also introduced to my right is Brian Fitzpatrick, who's in charge of real estate for the Peninsula Corridor Towers Board, and his staff are also here if there are more specific questions about the project that they're doing. So first, let me just kind of recap the resolution necessity hearing. A couple of ground rules that are relevant to all of these hearings is that the board has full discretion as to whether or not to adopt the recommended resolution necessity. The amount of compensation is not a consideration in this hearing. And finally, the board must make each of the findings contained in the respective resolution of necessity prior to their adoption. Just to provide some context for the Los Gatos Creek Bridge Replacement Project, this is a map that shows the area context south of Diridon Station, obviously where the rail line crosses over Los Gatos Creek. And to the right, you see the more immediate areas affected and setting the context for why this is an important project. There are specifically two easements that would be covered by the resolution of necessity. The first is an approximately 6,400 square foot temporary construction easement that allows staging, storage, and workspace for the project. The second one would be approximately 19,600 square foot temporary access easement that would allow non-exclusive access for the staff for the project and their contractors to reach the project. And this map, and I realize it's a little washed out here, but this shows the respective construction easement in light blue, and it shows the yellow, the temporary access easement. One point I'd like to clarify, just because it may be a little bit confusing, that you will see on this map in the resolution necessity, it actually shows the access easement affecting a corner of the retail building and also some of the parking spaces. The JPB, in working with the property owner has been going through a process of debating whether or not to demolish part of the building. And in an earlier discussion, there was a plan to do so, and so the easement reflects that. However, subsequently, the property owner decided to not demolish the building, and so the actual agreement that JPB has been working on does not affect the corner of the building, does not affect the parking. And so that is where they are today. They've actually been negotiating or close to agreement. However, the need for the resolution necessity is twofold. One is that this is a project that has extremely critical project schedule timelines because of the timing of doing work in the riparian corridor and the impact on the overall project. Also, we are dealing with some corporate entities, and so there's a concern on the part of staff that there may be a need to engage the corporate entities and get their attention to start the resolution necessity process. Having said that, again, staff at JPB is fairly close to completing their work and is hopeful. But what this resolution necessity will do is really provide the backstop to ensure the project schedule can be met in case they cannot complete the negotiations. And also it will allow the option that should the property owner once again change their mind and demolish part of the property, that they would have the ability to expand the area that's affected. So I hope that's not too confusing, but that's really the things that the JPB is trying to accomplish with the project.
First, let me start by saying if now that we're opening the public hearing, is there anyone here who would like to address the board on this matter? Anybody in the public who's here to address the board? So, okay, so seeing none, are there any questions for my colleagues?
So, yeah, it's not a question, I just want to clarify. This is a temporary easement, this is not to go ahead and we're not acquiring property. This is just temporary while the work's being done, and then we're out.
Exactly. Temporary construction and temporary access.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, then that passes. Now, do I need to take one more vote on this or no? On the findings, yes, okay. So now, if I could, I'd like to get a motion to adopt the resolution
Second.
of necessity. Okay, all right. I hear you. We have a motion, a second. All those, any questions or discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We're now going to move on to item 5. There are no committee reports this month, so I'm going to move to our consent agenda. I want to make a couple comments before we consider approval of our consent agenda. First, item 6.3 is to formally append the resolution 2016.06.17. The candidate project list that was not previously attached is attached. It's already been approved by the board. So on June 24th, 2016, the board rescinded Resolution 2016.06112 and adopted Resolution 2016.06.17, which revised only the language describing the State Route 85 corridor-related projects. Since there were no changes to the project list that were previously approved by the board, these lists were not included in the June 24th packet. To avoid any possible confusion regarding the approved project lists, staff recommends that the board take a formal action to append the attachments labeled as attachments A through D to the adopted resolution 2016.06.17. By taking this formal action, there will be a permanent record of the approved candidate projects list associated with the resolution and the ballot measure proposed to the voters this November. Are there any questions? As part of the action for 6.3, I advise the General Counsel to correct any non-substantive typos in the resolution before the Registrar of Voters finalizes the ballot language. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, seeing none. Second, for item 6.8, this is a sustainability report. I just wanted to give the staff a big hug, which I kind of did previously. So let me just make a couple of other comments. That they really did do great work, great work, but also a really great study. And I want to make sure that the discussions and planning are ongoing to provide for the implementation of evolutions in technologies and practice that support sustainability as part of our ongoing work and policy. Lastly, on item 6.10, Audit Dashboard, I want to note that the Governance and Audit Committee is scheduled to receive a status update on the implementation of the audit recommendations at our September meeting. So are there any questions on any of what I just said? Yes. Do you want to pull? Yes. And may I get a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar, items 6.1 through 6.12, with the additional action for items 6.3 and 6.8.
Second.
Mayor?
I
Ricardo?
actually had questions on two items. One you touched on, 610. The other was 6.7. If you'd like me to pull them, happy to do that. If you'd rather just me ask the question, I'll do it. Great. Thank you. On item 6.7, I understand that we've got a lot of good projects proposed. ERFI, Intelligent Transportation System projects. And oh, happy day, we have additional dollars in the countywide program funds, which is great. I just want to confirm, and thank you, John, for being here, because I know you worked hard to get this measure passed in 2010, so thank you for that. I appreciate your work on that. Are we pulling these funds from any of the dollars that are distributed pro rata to cities for payment, or is this part of the 15%? This is part of the 15%. So
Right.
80% goes directly back to cities by formula for pavement, and then there was a countywide program. This is a portion of that. Okay, so it's all staying within the 15% Correct. family. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And just add on that item, one other point I wanted to make is that I had asked staff to let us know what the policies were for folks who were receiving money for recordings and videos. It's something that we had talked quite at length about with ANF. And while we don't govern how they handle that, what I did want to make sure of is that the VTA staff did have the policies that were on file with each of the cities. So if we were ever asked, we would be able to report on that. So that's the only addition I'd like to make.
Item 610, and thanks, John. I know that our chairperson indicated the committee would review this report again, and I know that particularly on the SVRT, we had some challenges getting responses back on some of the items. Look at referrals, roughly 56, 55, 54, 53, 52. You'll see several referrals where it was considered not implemented because we didn't get the status yet. And some of these I know have to do with issues relating to spending on that project. Could we get an update at the next meeting as to whether or not those have been implemented or not?
Thank you. Raj Rina, Chief Financial Officer, VTA. The answer is yes. We will be coming back to the Governance and Audit Committee in September to provide an update. Most certainly, we can provide the same update to the full board as well.
Great. Just on consent would be fine. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? So with the additions that have been added, can we get a motion well, we had a motion in a second. I'm sorry. Did the motion maker accept the request for information and direction?
Yes, absolutely true.
And the seconder, was that Magdalena? Yeah. Okay. Great. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that passes unanimously. We're now going to move to item 7.1 to our regular agenda. This first item is to consider and adopt proposed ordinance 2016.01, an ordinance of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority enacting a action and use tax subject to an adoption of the electorate, which tax to be administered by the State Board of Equalization. And I think this goes to Rob, right?
Yeah, so this is the second part of the passage of the ordinance that's tax, should that be approved by the voters in November. This is just a requirement that we meet with the Board of Equalization. Similar to the first reading, second reading, a little bit different here.
Great. Are there any questions? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that passes unanimously. I'm going to recuse myself. Oh, I'm so sorry, Eugene. I'm so sorry. Come on up, Eugene Bradley. Oh, my goodness. I was on a roll there. I'm so sorry. Welcome.
I think you should have buttered that roll a little more.
Right, you get that one. You're right.
Yeah. Anyway, a couple of things, though. First, I wanted to invite VTA over to a little debate that our group is going to be having about whether or not to support this ordinance. We're going to ask for some more information regarding this ordinance, and it should be noted that my group and I were part of the Envision Silicon Valley process for this measure. So we're inviting VTA to come on over for our group's next meeting, August 30th, San Jose Peace and Justice Center, 48 South 7th in San Jose. We're going to debate whether or not to support this measure, which will likely be called Measure B. Speaking of Measure B and likely Measure A, just as a thought, something that might want to be added to this just before it's sent to final approval. USA Today, I read recently, 5 companies in particular have over $500 billion worth of cash on hand. Even 4 of those companies, like Apple, Alphabet, Cisco, and Intel, gave even 1.5% of that money. That could easily have paid for not only the $6.3 billion of Measure B, what will likely be Measure B. It will also fund the $950 million worth of Measure A. So before VTA and the county decide to go to basically the citizens to pay for things to raise their own high cost of living, why not instead ask the people who are driving all this to pay for it themselves? Just a thought for the night. Thank you.
Madam Chair, would you mind redoing the vote in light of the fact
That I apologize to Eugene and my colleagues. So we'll retake the vote. So all of those in favor signify. Oh, I need a motion.
Second.
Motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, thank you. And we'll follow up on your request for attendance at a meeting. We're now going to move to item 7.1, and I'm going to recuse, I'm sorry, 7.2, I'm going to recuse myself from this item, and I'm going to step out. So anybody else who has to recuse should step out.
Also recusing. Thank you.
I'd like to recuse myself too.
Yeah.
We still have 8? Okay. So the next item is 7.2, which is the approval of an eligible list of 15 on-call systems engineering consultants to provide professional services on projects that include, but are not limited to, the following categories: rail rehabilitation, track work, traction power substation, also known as TPSS, overhead contact systems, OCS, signals, communications, and facility electrical system work, and authorize the general manager to execute contracts to firms on this list. The list will be valid for a 5-year period. The total amount of all contracts shall not exceed $10 million. Carolyn Gannott will give us a presentation.
I'm just briefly going to introduce this subject and then move it over to Ken Ronci, the Deputy Director in my division, who is managing this list. I just wanted to let you know, we, as this agency moves forward with their projects, we have a whole list of projects on our current capital budget, as well as what will be coming over the next few years, which many of them are state of good repair, as well as some expansion projects. And we do use consultants to help us do those types of engineering design services that we need as we move the projects into constructions. Cover this real quickly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So there's really 2 actions in this item. One is to approve a list, and the other is to authorize the general manager to enter into agreements for not to exceed $10 million. As Carolyn mentioned, we have a litany of projects lined up for track and overhead contact systems and repairs and assessments to keep the system moving efficiently. To do this, we rely on easy access and quick access to consultants, and we use an on-call list to help us do that. It helps us deliver projects quickly. It helps us do performance assessments, evaluations, and to prepare construction documents. The current list we have is expired, and it's time for us to establish a new list. We issued a request for proposals. We received 15 proposals of qualified firms and determined based on their expertise what classification they would go in. We ranked them by way of the qualification of the firm, the staffing in the project organization, their understanding, and then the local firm preference. The 15 firms that were concluded to be eligible for the list are attached in Attachment A. And you'll note that there are 6 different categories, and based on their proposals and their special skills, they were assigned each of the classifications. We're asking tonight for your approval to approve this list and to allow us to enter into agreements with these firms with an cumulative amount not to exceed $10 million. The funding, as Carolyn said, is all approved in the current, or any task order issued will be included in the appropriate board-approved budget. So with that, we'll open it to questions and ask for action.
Go ahead.
Yes, Ken, thanks for the report. Just want to know, in terms of the DBE portion, you noted that you will be looking at that on individual task orders. How does that report come back to the board? Do we get a report on these over time so that we can see how we perform in terms of disadvantaged business? minority businesses? Do we?
Yes, Board Member Herrera, the Office of Human Resources, the Division of Diversity and Inclusion, provides a report to the board on all of our DBE, SBE, LBTQ, and other participation. And we do that once a year. And as a matter of fact, we're coming due for a report shortly.
Great, thank you. Motion to approve.
Do we have any other questions? Do I have a second?
Motion to approve.
Is the motion to do both parts, to approve the list and authorize the general manager?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I second.
Moving the item.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes unanimously with members Chavez, Licardo, Camus, and Nguyen recused. Come on back, Cindy.
Card game out there.
Very much, Jeannie. So we now move on to item 7.3, which is comprised of two recommended actions. First, to authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Clever Devices in amount not to exceed $15 million, and a bunch of other, for the purchase of installation and implementation of the computer-aided dispatching and automatic vehicle location system with an annually excisable option for software maintenance and hardware warranty for 4 years. From 4 to 10 years. So, and then item 2 of that is to augment the VTA Transit Fund capital budget by $23 million, almost $24 million. Before we have staff present, I just want to remind my colleagues that this item requires 2/3 votes to pass. And Inez Evans, our fearless Chief Operating Officer, will present the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Inez Evans, Chief Operating Officer. As Ms. Chavez has already indicated, we're here to discuss our recommendation to move forward with Clever Device as the awarded contractor on this matter. In 2003, VTA went through an extensive upgrade. The system has now gone through its useful life, and it's now time for replacement. I'm going to turn the rest of the presentation over to my employee here, Mr. Junie Toloso, who is our subject matter expert on the CAD AVL system.
Thank you, Inez. I'm Junie Tolosa. I'm the manager for Operations Analysis, Reporting, and Systems. Thank you, Madam Chair. You introduced already the recommendation pretty much. You should have a revised copy provided for you today. There were 2 minor changes to that to particularly indicate the names of the other proposers and to also indicate the funding source for the required additional appropriation. With that, I just wanted to give clarification on the budget portion. A portion of the required budget for this project was included in the previous budget cycle in order to facilitate the initial stages of project scope definition. Now that the scope has been finalized with an overall estimated value of $28.7 million, which includes purchases with other companies, staff labor, and contingency, that's the request for the balance of additional appropriation of $23.7 million. Let me give a little bit of background on this project. VTA implemented the current CAD AVL system for bus in 2003. That system is what we now call Advanced Communication Systems, or ACS. The CAD AVL system that we have is a primary system used by our Operations Control Center that manages the service in the field. It's a mission-critical system for VTA and an important component in keeping a safe transit service. The current CAD AVL system has been in operation for 13 years and now lacks the system functionality available in current technology, not to mention that our light rail mode does not have a CAD AVL system in place. In addition, the failure rate of our onboard equipment is increasing and the availability of parts is very limited. So in June 2014, the Board of Directors approved the replacement of the CAD AVL system through a competitive negotiation process. The scope of the project includes the integration of the light rail into the CAD AVL space, the integration to the Silicon Valley Regional Communication System, a much improved real-time passenger information system, single sign-on of the onboard vehicle equipment, and last but not least, an automated monitoring for operator hours of service that effectively replaces our manual driver logbooks. VTA staff went through an extensive procurement process in order to select the best value Caddyville product for VTA. We issued the RFP on September 2015 and received 4 proposers. 3 out of the 4 proposers, namely Clever Devices, Innit Innovations, and Trapeze Software Group, advanced to the oral interviews and system demonstration process. In every step of the evaluation process, Clever Devices demonstrated a superior understanding of the project scope and presented the best technical fit and flexibility for VTA's requirements. Clever Devices demonstrated a high-quality product. As such, the VTA selection team found this firm highly qualified in every criterion and the best value investment for VTA. I'm confident that at the conclusion of this project, VTA will have a state-of-the-art Caddyville system that will be a model for the transit industry. To close, I'd like to state again staff's recommendation to award the Caddyville replacement contract to Clever Devices and augment the VTA Transit Fund capital budget. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Junie, thank you. You made reference to earlier appropriation, and I assume that's the $4.96 million that's mentioned on the bottom of page 3. Was that, I know you said that you needed to cover some of the preliminary costs. Did that have any relationship to what VTA at the time believed this project was going to cost? Or did we expect that the cost would be considerably more than that 4.96?
We know it's going to be more than that, but because we wanted to go through a negotiated procurement, we didn't want to publicize the rest of what we planned it to be.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I might have missed it. We often have sort of an engineer's estimate, so to speak, when we're doing procurement. Is there some kind of equivalent that we have here?
We have it. We did not reflect it here as well because of the negotiated procurement aspect of it. It would show how much we would have budgeted, but we could provide that information.
Okay, I mean, obviously, I don't want to ruin the negotiation,
Yes.
but
This procurement was very different from your typical low bid, where we provide that estimate. In this instance, because it was going to be a negotiated procurement, proposals determine the qualifications, and then the firm that we selected, based on their qualifications, we were going to open up and see what they had submitted as the cost. Because of that two-step process, we did not include it in this document. It's available. Now that we have negotiated, we can make that.
appropriate to say what it is now?
Good.
Not until we vote on it. Oh, okay. All right.
So
It seemed to be a moot point once we vote on it, wouldn't it?
Right. No, I think that's an interesting point. So
Risk is if that you don't approve it, we have a number out there that we would have out there.
Interesting.
Candidate with that information.
Okay, I appreciate that risk. I mean, I'm going to just throw this wild one out there, but I'm guessing we're going to approve this.
Always rescind your vote if you
Okay, all right.
Okay, and so, well, and let me just say, first of all, I want to just say to the staff that and you'll know this very soon, that they did a good job. But second, and I think this is just two issues that came up for me I wanted to share with my colleagues. One is that as we were talking about the CAD system overall, Jeannie and I got a chance to be briefed in part because of the overall expense of this and the length of time this had gone over. So I think they wanted to make sure that there was some ongoing knowledge of how this was proceeding. But there were two issues that were raised, and I wanted just to raise them all with you. And one was that I am very interested in us considering the buses as hardware and all of the new innovations we're putting into them, kind of the software improvements. And so on this issue in particular, I was very interested in us having the capacity to have real-time closed-circuit TV on all of the buses. This is an issue that those of us who've been on administration and finance, we've been talking about this for a while. We were not able to integrate it into this when I'm a little concerned about that, mostly because I think that wherever we have an opportunity to leverage our investments, I'd like us to be doing that. But the staff has persuaded me that it may make sense to scope that work more carefully and then to go out. The second issue that I just wanted to raise is that it also has helped me think a lot more about what our operations center ought to look like. And so I just wanted to say to all of you that 2 recommendations I would like to be attached to this is an investigation in terms of where the long-term fate of our operations center ought to be, meaning does it need to be rebuilt? Is it big enough? And especially given that so many of our sister organizations across the country are really rethinking their operations centers, both their location and how they're used. And then second, that I do think we have to be thinking about security in a much more disciplined way. I think the staff's been thinking about that, but I think as elected officials we need to think about that. I think the times are changing, and I think as we look at all of the new systems we're going to be bringing online, it'll be incumbent upon us to really be steeped in thinking about security in a different way than perhaps we had.
Mayor Liccardo, if it helps you at all, I did get a briefing, and I'm comfortable with taking a yes vote.
All right, thank you, John.
Is that another way of saying I'm the cheapest guy you know?
Pretty much.
All right.
Well, the suspense is killing me.
All right. So I want to, if the maker of the motion could include the 2 referrals I'm asking for information on. I don't have a plan about how to proceed, but I would just like information both on whether or not we should be looking at closed circuit television that is live, and people can see it live, and then second, that we at least start to investigate the fate of our operations center.
So moved with the chair's 2 recommendations to be included.
We get a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, you want a drum roll?
So, for the base, at least for the Clever Cat AVL, the base, our ICE was 19.3 million.
Are the Clever folks here? I know, and let me just say, thank you, Clever. All right, so thank you very much, and thanks to the staff. You all did a really fine job, and we're looking forward to these next areas of work. So we're going to move on then to item 7.3. 7.4, geez, Cindy, 7.4. You know what? Someone just walked. No, I've been giving up caffeine, and it's making me nutty. So maybe just the Diet Coke, but not the caffeine altogether. Okay, so item 7.4. I mean 5.
No, 4.
Oh,
It's 4.
too many Christmas. Okay. This is service and sponsorship level for Levi Stadium event, and I'm going to turn this over to Raj.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of the board. Just want to, just as a background, VTA has provided excellent service to Levi's for the past 2 years now, and continues to do so. However, increased levels of service means increased cost. Based on the past 2 years of experience, we have been able to contain or cut costs down by quite a bit. For example, now, one by right-sizing the operations, the second with the help of the 49ers now. Right-sizing the operations, we used to have over 50 express buses on standby before. We have really dramatically cut that down. And we have also enlisted 49ers now to help us sell our fare media. We used to have 8 or 10 VTA employees before. Now they do that in their store with their employees, and we don't pay them anything. We used to incur about $135,000 per event or per game on a net basis, net of fare revenues, before we implemented the right sizing of the operations and outsourcing of the. Right now, we incur about $65,000 on a net basis. That's net of fare revenues. So we have cut the expenses down by half. So on a gross cost of $95,000, we get about $30,000 in fare box revenues. That's roughly about 31% or so of fare box recovery. Just as a reference, on a regular service, we get about 12%, so that's about 2.5 times more. Also, we get incremental benefit from the sales tax revenues. We had enlisted Muni Services, our sales tax consultant, last year, and they gave us an estimate of about $25,000 per event in additional sales taxes. This is both sales from the concessions in the stadium as well as sales, taxable sales outside on event days. So on a net basis, we still incur about $40,000 in expenses per game day. That comes to about $400,000 for 10 games. So this is something we still need to recoup. So we have been negotiating with the 49ers for the last several months now, and finally we have been able to reach an agreement with them on a sponsorship. Some of the key highlights of the terms of the sponsorship agreement are, number one, VTA will provide express or limited stop service from the end of the line stations, which is your Mountain View, Santa Teresa, Alum Rock, and it'll be either Winchester or Diridon. On game days to the stadium, as well as back from the stadium to these end-of-line stations. And in exchange, 49ers will help promote and assist in the sales of two commemorative pass options. One is a $149 season pass that's good for 10 games, and also a $20 round trip for a single event or a single game. Few of the things the 49ers have agreed to do are, one, permit us to use their team marks or their logo on this co-branded card. They will also have one full-page ad on each issue of their Game Day magazine, and they'll have about two displays during the game, LED displays during the game promoting this product and our service, and two pre-game. So that's 2 plus 2, 2 during the game, 2 before. And they will also have this on their website. They will do an email blast to their season ticket holders, except those who have opted out of receiving any communication. So these are the things they'll be doing, and also they'll be selling these passes at their store or the Visa store at the stadium. We will also do likewise in our stores also. These are the things that promote this product or this fair. The revenue arrangement would be the first $500,000 of revenue received, VTA will keep all of it, and to the extent we get any revenues in addition to our above $500,000, that will be split equally between the 49ers. I'm somewhat cautiously optimistic. I'm not sure. This is a pilot. I'm not sure whether we'll hit the $500,000 mark or not. But as I said, we'll more or less break even with this if everything goes right. There is one small note on my read of talking points here. I've been asked to remind that the attachment 84308, which did not go with the initial memo, is now in your board packages. With that, let me stop. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Ricardo.
Thank you. Sorry to keep hogging the mic. I just had a question.
Sure.
Reg, you mentioned that we roughly break even. That's accounting for the deficits you believe that the additional revenue with this ticketing deal would enable us to roughly break even.
That's my expectation.
Okay.
That's the expectation.
And we also provide enhanced service during events if Shakira is playing at the stadium or something, right?
That is correct, but this is a negotiation just with the 49ers, and that's a separate conversation we have to have with the stadium authority.
Okay, so this pass can't be used by somebody going to a concert. It can only be used.
That is correct. This is valid only on the 10 game days. That's preseason and season games, correct.
So do we need to negotiate with the city then, or the stadium authority, or how?
Yes, Mayor. For all non-football events, the stadium authority, which is in fact the city of Santa Clara, will be the party that we would have to sit down and have a conversation, a negotiation on how we would be addressing our transportation services.
That'll be next.
Great. Are there any other questions? Oh, Glenn.
Yeah.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I just wanted to pile on to Mayor Ricardo here about if maybe there could be one of these add-on items to any potential motion to be able to understand what the stadium authority is doing for reducing overall traffic and congestion management on non-stadium day or non-football days. I think this is great, the program, what we're trying to put in place, but I think if we all understand what goes on, the football games, those season ticket holders and stuff, those are the ones probably the traffic is easiest and best on event days. It's the single event type things when it's the people who are not the regular users there. So it would be nice to see
continuing to expand and evolving to see what services can go on to try and help what is the overall congestion management and traffic to there. So I don't have a specific suggestion, but if what can be done, or we can hear reports back later of what VTA is able to do in working with the stadium authority.
Don't we have a committee that?
Thank you very much for that comment. And as I'm looking at John Risto, at our congestion management program and planning committee, we will begin to address that and invite the planning from the city of Santa Clara to join us in that presentation.
The pass, so it's good from the end of the line to the stadium, but I assume they're going to be making all the regular stops, so you could pick it up anywhere. It's going to be an express from the end of the line.
That's correct. We will have special express trains that would make limited stops. In addition to the regular trains will still be available, but the special express trains are the ones that the $20 round trip fare applies to.
So,
and if I could just add, I think that when we talked about this before, that's probably going to be the best marketing strategy for it. When people are seeing that when they're at the game, here people are getting on trains and going, and people are having to wait for other trains, that is probably going to be the best marketing program for it.
Any other comments?
I just want to thank staff for reaching out to the 49ers and negotiating this deal. I'm hoping that we will break even on this matter. Thank you.
I do have one question. Are we going to be able to see, and at what frequency, how sales are progressing of particularly the season pass? Will we have kind of real-time information so we can get early indications?
Yes, I don't want to promise real time, but definitely, as promptly as possible, we can report back to the board.
There are, if I may, there are a number of elements that are going to be supporting this new process. The sales of the season tickets, the season pass, in addition to the regular to $20 pass, and then we're also integrating the sales tax from the concessions, and the sales tax from the concession and just the regular sales tax, that delta in the regular sales tax on event days, that information comes 30 days later is when we get those reports. But in terms of how many season passes were sold, we would know that pretty soon. The season begins
August 14th.
I'm looking at a season ticket holder.
That's right. Now we know. All right. So with no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to our... Oh. I thought Rob was motioning. He's a season ticket holder. No? Okay. So can we have a motion from Teresa O'Neill? No, I'm kidding. So we have a motion and a second. Again, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Now, it's our last item on the agenda, 7.5, review and receive the Auditor General's report on the Alum Rock Bus Rapid Transit Project Construction Delay Assessment. This item was also presented to the Governance and Audit Committee in May and to the Downtown East Valley Policy Advisory Board in June. So, Bill, I think you're going to get us started. Yes, Bill?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Bill Eggert. I am the Auditor General here at VTA. As you may or may not know, we routinely bring in subject matter and industry expertise to assist us with our audits and our reviews. For the Alum Rock BRT project, we brought in Mr. Joe Iacobucci. He's worked on a couple of these throughout the country. And many of you may recognize Pat Hagan, the previous Auditor General, who is a wealth of information. So I'm going to let these two gentlemen walk you through our presentation today. Pat?
Thank you, and good afternoon. We were asked by the board, who engages us directly, to take a look at the Alum Rock issue, and many of you are familiar with the background of that, so we'll cover it at a high level. But our task was to look at some of the issues that may have occurred during this particular project and most importantly, to make some recommendations for improvement and best practices going forward. A large part of that was seeking community input, and we'll talk in a minute about some of the feedback that we got. And as the chair mentioned, we did indeed present this previously to the G&A committee as well as to Member Carrasco's DTEV, Policy Advisory Board. Our scope, you can see, included reviewing the comprehensive BRT plans, the schedules, the contracts, the public notices. We spent a fair amount of time interviewing VTA staff members as well as the City of San Jose and some of the G&A board members. Most importantly, we got some very good feedback from the public, specifically the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Alum Rock Business Association, so we thank them for their input and participation. Just a recap of the project as we saw it. As you know, the Alum Rock portion is only really 1.4 miles of the total 7 miles. This being a BRT project, a bus rapid transit project, it was fairly complex, including the construction of a dedicated median, the bus-only lane, and some new stations and stoplights. And as you all know, this was compounded by the neighborhood setting and the retail that fronts the street in that particular area. The cost you can see there was initially estimated for this portion at $54 million, came in at about $72 million is the current estimate. Similarly, with the schedule, there were some delays. The final design completion was in 2013. The contractor that was originally engaged was changed, or it was called demobilization as of September 2015, and currently management's estimating that the construction completion will be in December 2016 with revenue service to follow shortly. So our process involved looking at 4 primary areas, and those are identified here as the construction process, contracting, communications, and then planning and design coordination. For each of those, we provided a series of detailed recommendations. We spoke about what the desired outcome would be, and then what observations and contributing factors we saw relevant to this particular project. And perhaps most importantly, we made a number of recommendations. There were about 34 in total, and you can see those were broken down between some that were really procedural and some that impacted the VTA policy. Management provided some very extensive comments and responses that we'll talk about. And as typical in our reviews, those included an action plan and a target date and individual responsible parties. So I'll turn it to Joe now to walk through our individual comments.
Thanks, Pat. In regards to this, to the comments that we have here, they're under 4 basic categories. The first one of those is being construction process, and as Pat mentioned, that these are listed in order to identify what the ideal outcome whenever you have a construction project, and then what we saw that occurred in our analysis. So the first being on schedule completion. What we found that there was a inadequate baseline schedule and schedules throughout the process from the contractor with VTA. There's issues of work stoppages where one section of a project was delayed. These are very complex projects, a very long corridor, and a lot of times if there's a portion of the project where there's a delay, a lot of times the contractor will find out ways to keep working on other portions of the project. There was a lot of issues here where one section was delayed, the whole project stopped at one point. And then another thing, obviously, that impacted the schedule was the contractor demobilization about a year ago. In regards to safety, there were gas lines and other utilities that were impacted throughout the process. This is a very old corridor. It's one of the oldest corridors in the city, very complex for utilities relocations. Safety is a big part of a successful construction project. And the third, in this category would be to minimize community impacts. Pat mentioned, and everybody here is aware, that there's a very lively retail business fronting this corridor, this 1.4-mile section. And a lot of times the contractor, in order to speed the project, would shut down very long sections of one side of the street. It's more appropriate in a project like this to work in very small, discrete sections for shorter periods of time. So the recommendations from these findings include that first to insert penalties in the contract for failures to perform to make sure that construction processes continue moving and speed of schedule is expedited. Second is for a very mature corridor like this, use ground penetrating radar in order to do utility scans. And the third and final for this this category is to consider community impacts, not only speed of schedule or budget when doing the scheduling for this process. The second large category, going back to contracting, includes 4 different areas. First is contractor qualifications. In this process, the low bid selection process was utilized, and contractor on this corridor lacks significant experience in a mature corridor, as I mentioned in the previous section. In addition, subcontractors, which there were several in this project, because due to the complexity, were not adequately managed. The second item is contractor expectations. What we understood in our experience here was that there were incomplete bid documents actually that went out, and proof of that is in the 510 clarifying questions throughout the project, and which leads to the next issue of scope definition. There were 25 contract changes executed in the very early stages of the project. So it goes again to lack of specificity in the bid documents. And then finally, issues with contract compliance, basic things like permitting and progress reporting were not done adequately throughout the project. Recommendations are that schedule, in order to speed schedule and in order to take some complexity out of a project like this, is to have a lot of pre-construction activities, right of acquisition, utility relocation. That also goes back to safety in the previous slide, as I mentioned. And to prepare specific and more detailed bid documents, and finally to ensure there's other bodies that are briefed on this, the Policy Advisory Board being one of them, for consistency throughout this process. The third issue being communications, as 2 main categories. First, public messaging. What was experienced in this project was there was not necessarily a single point of contact. There was some inconsistency with messaging on this. And when there was a shutdown process, there was no communication with the community to identify necessarily why the shutdown was occurring. The second item, build community understanding prior to construction. A lot of times with a project like this, the planning process, the horizon from the planning process through construction can be several years. And of course, you have turnover in the neighborhood, and of course, people forget, exactly what the understanding of the project was. It's an issue here that we want to identify with a complex new project like this in the area to ensure that community understanding as new people move in the corridor, as refresh people's understanding of the project. So, no recommendations. We identified to designate a single point person for all communications throughout the process, so people know exactly who that person is. And to open a project office actually on the corridor in the community that is accessible for the community to ask questions at any time. It also has project information, and basically an expansion of our formal and also informal communications programs. The final item really goes back to planning and design leading up to the construction process. But what we found with our various discussions, both internally and externally, is that there were coordination issues. So, for instance, the bid was released without a final agreement on some of the design details between the city and the VTA. Internally, there was limited communication on some of the items for the construction bid, and that leads to sort of the last item. If there's not 100% perfect coordination, you can lack sort of a strong voice in the community for a project like this. So the recommendation in the future is at the very beginning of the project is to do some consensus building with project framing workshops to ensure that all staff from our various agencies are on board with this. And then also, again, this is another recommendation, but to engage the Policy Advisory Board and other standing board committees as appropriate to ensure that these issues are resolved in the future. We're gonna end the presentation just identifying some best practices around the country. BRT is relatively a new technology in the U.S. and this is the first one in the Bay Area, and a lot of these projects were the first ones in their regions. So that being said, not one process is 100% perfect at this point. Agencies are learning from each other. So just wanted to highlight a couple of examples. For instance, the New York City MTA, when they constructed the 34th Street, is they held construction during the day in the residential areas of the project, where when people are at work. Businesses were closed in the business part of the district. In Chicago, the Loop Link was a project that I worked on. We ensured that all the utility relocation was done prior to construction. So it was actually two separate processes. It lengthened the process out, but it was more effective on the actual construction. And all these projects had a lot more informal communications, coffee and chat meetings, for instance, for the Lane Transit District. So in summary, we did discuss management responses, and as Pat mentioned, management was very involved in the process, and by the time we actually came into the project, there was already responses in order. At this time, Carolyn's going to join us to go over some.
Thank you. I just wanted to cover a number of areas, not just in terms of the management responses, which were coordinated. We agreed with what the Auditor General had come up with and did provide with them afterwards as well, and what we would be doing as well. I'm not going to read everything that's on these slides, but just to give you a couple of key things that we have been doing. One of the things we've done in the department recently is to add a new process. We have a construction requisition review process, or a sign-off before we put a project into construction, but it's very limited. And so now we have what we call pre-construction requisition review process. And it probably has about 20, 30 things on a checklist, anything from coordinating with operations to the other agencies, to permitting agencies, to regulatory agencies, to whether the grants are funded appropriately, but it also takes into consideration utility relocations, your communications plans, and it has about a number of things. And that list is now prepared by the project manager and signed off if needed by other departments to actually show that we're ready for construction. And that really tries to help us avoid, we're probably never going to avoid all change orders, but really reduce the number of change orders and really reduce addendums, so we don't have the issues, confusion during bidding processes, which sometimes ends up costing us money or funding budget later on in the project, as well as the change orders in the future. So we've done that. As they mentioned earlier, the ground penetration radar, we did use that in the downtown area before we went and did the downtown project. And if you have seen the downtown at 5th and at near City Hall, as well as at between 1st and 2nd, that project's almost done. We did do some ground penetration radar, as well as all of Alum Rock, before we released the last contract. And that contract started recently, and you'll see a lot more work, and it's a lot, I think, cleaner out there. They're moving forward. We haven't had a lot of issues with that, no issues actually with that contractor to date. So we have started to use that, as well as on a number of other projects. The other areas that we have it under the construction process, because it really needs to be coordinated, integrated, is develop these community outreach plans early on in the project life, coordinate them among the agencies, among the stakeholders, and also make sure that we communicate them to the Policy Advisory Board and bring those forward and walk through it with the Policy Advisory Board, because many times you understand as more about your constituents than even we might know. And so to work with the Policy Advisory Board as we move the project forward. On the next one, on the contracting side, we've been working with really reviewing our board-adopted pre-qualification process. We really followed I would say a process that was actually adopted by the board, but we want to add more qualifications. And so in the last contract, we actually added in terms of what we would, in terms of them providing resumes for safety manager, for the project manager, for communications, and those aspects that were really key to us. And so that is part of the review that we do, is making sure that they're the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. So it's not just cost, that we're also looking at those aspects as well. And we're starting to look at contract language that allows us to actually tighten up specifications related to community impacts. We're also looking at our language on the contracts and the ability to terminate them and have an earlier reading on when we can terminate a contractor. And that was one of the areas that we did struggle with in this contract that we had, and the ability to move forward with any type of termination. And we ended up with the settlement agreement, which was worked out for both parties. In the communication side, Jim can talk to this as well if needed, but I think the project field office we did put out there has worked out really well. We do have one for BART, a project office. Most people don't get there. We had 2 field offices, but for this area where we're really within the community, BART's a little more hidden in terms of being in a railroad corridor and on their own sites for stations. This one, we're just really doing work right in the middle of a very busy business community. And then we've also used a software system that we used on BART really effectively, and that was tracking all project interactions and when people called and making sure we followed up. And so it's a whole software system. We actually use Salesforce as working with our customers, and that's who it is. Anybody we deal with, our stakeholders, the residents, the business owners, they're all of our customers in terms of how we need to treat them. Lastly, in planning and design coordination, I'm just going to hit the very first one. The project framing workshops or partnering workshops, we need to continue to conduct those throughout to ensure common understanding. We have done this with the city of Milpitas throughout the project, on the BART project, and we've been doing this bi-weekly right now with the city of San Jose for the Alum Rock project, and being able to move forward the permits and making sure we have everything on schedule, that the responsibilities that the cities have or the responsibilities that VT has, we're in alignment if we need to make changes to the schedule. And so it's myself and the project manager, Mohammed Basma, as well as the head of the Department of Transportation and Public Works at the city of San Jose. Marpal and Barry Yang bi-weekly to actually make sure everything is on track, as well as the staff that supports those efforts. So that's been going very well, and so we've initiated a lot of that, which is really heavily focused around communication, and I think that's really key in helping making these projects more successful.
Comments or questions? Yes, Johnny.
Are we as a department creating a recipe book, if you will, for future, in case you decide to move to an area? Is there like a repository of how to do things in a certain way being created?
I think actually doing that prerequisition, whatever, I forget what the name tag was, before we go into the construction contract, as actually makes people more disciplined. That's a real format, and we do put everything into the database. We've been doing training programs with our staff on that. We've done programs on contract management. Our legal, our counsel's office actually had our counsel come in and do a presentation regarding the contract and what change orders mean and when we would do those types of things. So we've been doing a lot more training and have that all available for staff to continue, so we can continue to train project managers, public outreach, environmental planning. I think we had 75 people at both of our trainings.
So I get it, like you have a big checklist, and that includes some of these suggestions or all of these suggestions regarding community outreach, for example.
Yes. Well, the community outreach is to making sure we have a community outreach plan and that we're staffed, and so those things will be in there. But I think what's key for community outreach plan is also to make sure that it's vetted throughout and then supported by those who, well, primarily right now we use the policy advisory boards, and to continue to do.
And I would just like to add, and to answer your question more specifically, and Ken Ronzi is in the audience, we have, we will be creating standard operating procedures for every element of contract, from planning, design to construction and closeout. And that would allow us to be able to go to this library of information so that it survives all of us, as you mentioned. And then it also becomes a resource for our engineers and both in the field and in the office, that they can go and make reference to. So there will be a section on community outreach and what that means and who talks to whom when and how often. Everything that has to do with permitting and working with other agencies and when that happens. So all in all, this has been, and I want to thank the board for leading us in this direction, at the Auditor General and their expertise to take a look at our process and identify areas that we can harden as we move forward. And then by creating this repository, the central repository of information, of guiding principles for how we're going to be managing projects and programs, I think that starts to address a lot of the concerns for continuity and standardization.
And after somebody fills out the checklist or the standard operating procedure, is somebody going to put their name on it so that we have accountability on top of that?
Yes, and Carolyn did mention these partnering sessions, and one of the things that we do is that we have our meetings internal with the staff and everyone who's going to be involved with the project, and we can certainly add lines to that checklist so that everyone who was part of that partnering meeting can then sign on and make a commitment to delivering the projects as specified in the construction documents, but also in conformance with all of these guiding principles that we would be creating.
Just add one other thing, that in your packet, and I think we got this a little bit late, you have an attachment B, and on that, one of the first things, and you may remember this actually came out of the audit committee, we had asked for an update on where they were in the implementation of a number of these steps. And if you also look on the last page of recommendations, you'll see that there's a list of what the recommendation is, the topic, the recommendation, and whether or not it was a policy or a procedure. And the reason that, in fact, this is something I requested, the reason I requested that is I wanted to better understand with the implementation plan what that would mean. So if the board needed to take an additional policy action, we can do that. If it's a procedure that then needs to be implemented, we could take a look at that. One recommendation that I'm going to make, or in fact we may have already done this at audit committee, is that we had requested that we get an update from the auditors to determine if there's any of these that haven't been implemented. And so one thing I would just say, since you're on the audit committee, that we may want to consider is thinking more critically about the action that was taken and whether or not it was taken to the extent that we think that has meaning in terms of long-term change. So the audit committee, and I don't know if I'll be on it in the future, but I would just say future chair and for members that I think that's going to be a very important piece of follow-up. So we're going to go to Mayor Hendricks and then to Magdalena.
Yeah, I guess as going second, I'm going to pile on to what Johnny said this time. And I'd like to interject a new word into, we've been talking about policy and procedures, and it really seems to me we're talking about requirements and being able to make sure that we get the requirements documented up front. And that, an example being here, it's a requirement that you can't close the entire street during a certain part of the project. Those things, because you mentioned you want to be able to have penalties, but you can't define what the penalty is unless you've defined clearly up front what the requirement is or what the criteria is that penalty would be there. And I assume when you're talking penalty that upfront piece is there, but I just wanted to go ahead and call that out because I think that's, in the 7.5.B, 1A, ensure the bid goes fully developed minimum change orders. Again, that goes back to making sure there's clarity of the requirements because that defines what we really want you to do. And I think it follows on with what you've been talking about these checklists. There's a menu of things, best practices that can be reviewed. Go, here, is this the type of project that needs to have this requirement included? Is this the type of project that needs to have that requirement included? And so I like the discussion that was going on, but I just wanted to throw that word out because to me that's what it really meant, is we need to be much clearer with the requirements of what we want, of what we require. That defines the expectations of how we expect a vendor to operate, and then you can go ahead and have the other things to make sure they're held accountable to that. But it always seems to me that it just comes back to the clarity and communication of what those requirement pieces are. And I like this, menu or things that you can review, and you have a history of, let's make sure, is this something, I don't have to just think of it on my own. I can go through a list and go, does this apply? Should it be included? Should it not be included? That helps get that consistency and best practices carried forward into the future. So requirements are to me, the word of the day. Thank you.
Magdalena.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for the very thorough report. I think it was Vice Mayor Rose Herrera that had initially asked for it. So I'm grateful for that. Because I think we were all very confused as to what had happened. We really wanted to put our finger on it. More than anything, I think the businesses really deserve to have answers, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't repeat the same situation as what had happened on Alum Rock and as what had happened to our businesses. So I want to thank you for today's presentation and for the report. And I also want to thank staff. I think that this has been a long journey. I think it's been a painful these have been growing pains, and it's also it has also cost us upward of, remind me? It's been, yep.
Continues to do so.
Yeah. And so, but I also want to remind everybody that for some of the businesses, it's also cost them their livelihood, and I don't want us to forget that. So I'm grateful to our board members for having been very understanding of what we've signed off on, and that we've supported, in some cases, for our businesses to keep their doors open. But for some of our businesses, they still nonetheless closed their doors. Some of them are still struggling, and this year they will close their doors. So this definitely had an impact on the character of the Alum Rock corridor. For some, it was it's going to be a wonderful change, and we're looking forward to it. For some, forever changed. So I think it behooves us to make sure that we do keep a checklist and that we use it as not just a reminder, but as a way of moving forward and making sure that we use best practices as our Bible in terms of how we move forward with other projects that are so important, vitality of our region, but also to make sure that our businesses are supported and that we do exactly that we inject vitality and the dynamic and the diversity of our businesses are kept alive. So I want to thank everybody, but remind everyone that this has been a very painful process for everybody, especially for those businesses.
So any other comments, Mayor?
I had two questions. Really appreciate the audit. Thank you. Look at, you said 25 change orders. Change orders came out at the gate really right after it was awarded. Could we have avoided this, or should we have avoided this with a design build contract? Would that have been inappropriate in this context?
Just my sense is that we might have avoided the 25 at the gate. We would have got 25 change orders over time if it was still sort of the contract that we had put out. If there was still some indecisiveness or indecision, not consensus on the project, I might have had the same issues.
Right. Okay, fair enough. And then secondly, around this ground penetrating radar, I understand we hit 18 utilities over the construction period of time, 3 gas lines. Seems like the ground penetrating radar in a road that's, probably the most historic route in the city. It's been there more or less for a couple hundred years. You think that would have been used routinely? Would that be the industry standard, that you would use that routinely in an old road like that?
Absolutely, on an old road like that, absolutely. And I would also just add to that too. With an old road, you can tell a lot of things from the penetrating radar, but there's still some things that you do find in addition to what the radar can tell as well. So that's why we sort of identified that, looking at if it's an old corridor like this in the future, doing some utility relocation before you actually get in the construction process to actually minimize the overall impact on the corridor. It might lengthen the pre-construction plus construction progress out a little bit, but you would be minimizing any prolonged.
Thank you very much.
So I just want to make 2 additions to this discussion. One is that at some point, I think it would be wise for staff to bring to the board a policy framework to determine under what terms and conditions we use best value contracting for these kinds of projects versus low bid. Because one of the situations we were in here is we didn't have a lot of options, and that's something that we should be thinking about. So I'm just going to make that a request that gets attached to this by the maker of the motion, to at least to investigate that so that the board can have a discussion about that. Because best value contracting gives a lot more flexibility to the staff in terms of determining skill set and frankly what our ability is to work with contractors long term. The second point I want to raise is that as it relates to the problems we've been having with undergrounding in this project, I just want to remind my colleagues that I did make a recommendation to all of you that we take a look at an underground authority, because I do think that the cities and PG&E and all of our partners really need to invest in making sure that once we open the ground up, we understand what's in there forevermore, so that we're not continuing to have this problem. The staff did a very good job of doing some research on that. I think the next step for staff was to have conversations with some of the cities to determine whether or not there was a level of interest, and the county, which I just want to encourage folks to make sure that stays on our work plan and gets raised again at your earliest opportunity, so that we can have a full report out on that. So are there any questions, other questions or comments? If I could ask those two to be included, one, to just have a report back on where we are in the process with the Underground Authority research, and then second is that we do ask staff to do at least a presentation on best value so that the board can understand what the opportunities are with that. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the motion?
I'm not sure I understand what an underground authority is.
So what it is in different parts of the country, all of the folks who are responsible for construction or for putting cables underground or whatever else have to map them, so that when someone's going into the street, they're not just going, I mean, frankly, we call everybody up and say, who's got what here? And what we really should have is one place that we can go. And when we open up the ground, that there's a repository for that information that gets put in one place. That our cities and county and anybody that we deem should have access to that does. And there's some security issues, so you don't want it to just be, up on a website. But all that being said, it shouldn't be secure from those of us who are building in the street, and just like the city, sewers, and parts of the city are so old that, and not just city of San Jose, but all over that we would be.
No, I did, yeah. But the real question I was trying to ask is, are you suggesting that we should be the underground authority?
No, not at all. In fact, what we're looking at is models in other places, and most often it's actually a separate entity that's made up of all of the cities, like a joint powers authority that's focused on that particular issue. No, I mean, I think we could design it however we thought appropriate. But I just, what I'm interested in is, do other people see this as a big expense and pain in the neck they'd also like to deal with? We do more construction, so we probably observe it more, but so that's but if we can just get a report back. All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that passes unanimously. We are now going to move on to item 8.1, and Nuria is going to give us her report. Thank you very much for all of your work.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'd like to begin my report introducing a new key member of my executive team, Mr. Rufus Francis. He is the new Director of System Safety and Security. He succeeds Steve Keller, who retired from the VTA last month. Rufus brings over 29 years of experience in safety security, occupational health and safety, and environmental systems and safety programs. And he has worked at large transit systems around the country. He was recently at the Sacramento Regional Transit District, where he retired from. He also worked at the Metro Transit in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and at the LA Metro. So please join me in welcoming Rufus to our team. String of good news. I'm also pleased to announce that we were recently awarded $2.4 million by the Federal Transit Administration's Low or No Emission Vehicle Deployment Program. It's known as the Low-No program. We will use that grant to fund our initial 5 battery electric buses for bus route number 10. goal of the federal program is to deploy the cleanest and most energy efficient U.S.-made transit buses that were successfully tested and demonstrated but not yet deployed by transit agencies. The low-no public transportation vehicles are defined as significantly reducing energy consumption, air pollution, or direct carbon emissions when compared to a standard fuel vehicle. We had originally applied for the first round of low-no funding, but were not successful. And what we learned for the second round was that the Federal Transit Administration was interested in applications that included a partnership between a public transportation agency and a private enterprise, which also removed the requirement for competitive bid. They determined that by getting these proposals, that would be part of the competition. So VTA partnered with Proterra on the application, and ours was one of only 20 funding grants that were awarded. The staff is now working with Proterra for the final contract for the 5 buses, and we expect delivery in the fall of 2017. I would like to add that we were also successful in getting state funding through the state's low carbon transit operations program as part of the cap and trade. We received $4.6 million. So that $4.6 million together with the $2.3 from the federal government is what's going to become the basis for funding of the 5 electric buses. And that would put us very much in line with on the trajectory to meet the state's zero emission bus program. Next Tuesday, on another note, next Tuesday, August 9th, we will be holding our ceremony to recognize VTA employees that have given our agency 25, 30, and 35 years of service. I would like to thank Board Member O'Neill, who's going to be joining us, and encourage all of you who are able to join us to be here on August 9th. It's such an honor to have the commitment of our greatest asset for a quarter century or more of their lives, and the sacrifices that their families have made to allow us to have them here and as we continue to serve the community. It's scheduled for 11 o'clock. 11:30, from 11:30 to 1. So thank you, in this very room. I also wanted to share with you all that yesterday we had the pleasure of hosting Mayor of Osaka, Japan, Hirofumi Yoshimura, and his very large delegation on our mobile laboratory where we shared the latest technology and innovations that we're testing to improve mobility, customer interface, and also predictability in our service. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Mayor Liccardo and the city of San Jose, because they're a sister city to Osaka, and that's why they were here, for making this opportunity available to us as well. Thank you.
Nuria, I just wanted to send at least my regrets and many of our city council members who can't be here on August 9th, because we have city council meeting the entire day. We start with closed session usually at 9 or 9:30 in the morning, and we don't end till noon, and then we start again at 1:30. So it would be very difficult to be there at 11:30. But please send our regrets and make sure that you let them know that, you know.
Absolutely. We will make reference to that because we know that you would want to be here. And the only reason that would keep you away is because you have other commitments. And the staff understands that. Our employees understand that. I think it's the fact that we are actually giving them the recognition and the due. And the fact, and they also get to bring their families, which is a sense of pride for them. And we have several generations that have worked here, and they all come. So it has become a major event for us. But thank you for sharing that conflict. And then just now moving on to ridership and security updates, I just wanted to mention that the ridership information is in your folders. But our overall ridership is down. And as compared to June of last year, we're seeing a significant decrease, both bus and rail. And that, of course, translates into a reduction in our fare revenues as well. So next month, just a reminder that at the September board workshop on Friday, September 23rd, we will have Jared Walker back with us discussing strategies to improve ridership. And with that, I would now, unless there are any questions on my report. I would like to, we have okay, on my report? Then let's do that before I invite Captain Lara to present. Captain Dave Lara is now going to provide us with an update on our security.
Evening. So on the screen we have displayed the June and July criminal incident reports and Fair Inspector statistics. We had 66 total incident reports and 72 arrests in July. Drawing your attention to the other category where you see a jump in numbers, it's important to note that this category is non-criminal incidents. Examples of these types of incidents would be mandated reporting of lost passports, which we have to take reports on, but it also includes our 5150 W&I Welfare and Institution Codes. Those are our mental health commitments. So you see when we do event breakdown up there on the screen, you also see that jump reflected in mental health commitments. We have seen an increase in these, and again, as I've reported in past board meetings, that increase we believe is due to the fact that we have a midnight shift out there. Additional deputies we didn't have before that cover 24-hour coverage on transit. They're encountering many of these individuals at night and getting them the help they need. The large number you see reflected in the Fair Inspector numbers for total passengers checked in June versus July is mostly the result of multiple events at Levi's Stadium, particularly 4 Copa America international soccer matches. We began the calendar year with an uptick in serious and violent incidents, which I reported back in the March board meeting. With the support of the general manager, we addressed this spike with increased community policing efforts, as well as enhanced enforcement operations that included increased patrols in key areas, enhanced plainclothes operations, and by implementing motorcycle patrols in key areas. These measures are generating success. We subsequently saw 3 straight months of decline, and in the 2 months that we allocated the majority of our resources, which is April and May, we saw a 44% decrease in serious or violent offenses than what we saw the same 2 months the previous year. Overall, year to date in 2016, violent incidents have been reduced by about 13% from the same time 2015. Lastly, I'd like to touch upon some of the national issues that we're all aware of and concerned about. It seems we get daily reminders of the threats that are out there by way of terrorism and attacks on law enforcement. Sheriff Transit Patrol, deputies, and our Protective Service team remain committed to protect our transit system. It's important to note that we have no specific direct threats known related to our transit system or our deputies. While we hope and strive never to have incidents like that here, we are not naive to the fact that the threats are out there, and we prepare and plan accordingly. The greatest benefit that we got from hosting Super Bowl 50 here in our area is that I honestly believe we are more prepared now than we've ever been before. Plans are in place, and we maintain the partnerships that we've developed and enhanced with local, state, and federal agencies during the Super Bowl 50 planning and operation. We also participate regularly in intelligence and information sharing, and that continues. We are promoting the See Something, Say Something campaign, enforcing the sterile areas that we've created, and we continue to educate the VTA employees and allow deputies to partner up into 2-man units for added safety. And most importantly, the Transit Patrol Division continues to foster positive relationships within the community. Working closely with the VTA General Manager, Nuria Fernandez, had a plan to hold quarterly community policing focused open houses at the Downtown Customer Service Center. Meetings will allow members of the public to meet with the Transit Patrol deputies face-to-face, voice concerns, bring issues to light, and work together on problems and issues pertaining to the transit system. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Captain Lara? Thank you for doing the open houses. That's a great idea. I'm glad you're doing that. And for all the men and women who work on your behalf, thank them for us. We're going to move on.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to item 8. Oh, I just wanted to remind everyone that the Government Affairs Update, item 8.1A, is also in your folder. The next item is the presentation on the Silicon Valley Rapid Transit Program status by Carolyn Gona.
And, oh, sorry, pull it closer. I'm not used to this technology. I just want to give a little bit on the progress. This is actually up at Warren Avenue in Fremont as we start to do some of the construction in this. I mean, actually install the track work and begin to actually. This is actually connection very close to the Warm Springs station as well in Fremont. Just want to give you a little bit of the Milpitas Station campus area. It actually is coming along quite well. This parking structure is almost complete. It's up in the left-hand corner there, in the upper right left-hand corner. The station is there in the middle of the screen. You can see the pedestrian overcrossing between the light rail and into the station area. They're currently working on the transit center, which is what is closest towards the bottom of the screen there. They finished the surface parking lot, which is up in the north area. That contract is complete. And they're continuing to build Milpitas Boulevard, which will connect, which will actually be a southern extension of it into the area. So as you can see, there's been quite a bit of work over the last year in this area. And I want to give you an update on the Berryessa Station campus area. So there's the track work, as you see, that's the aerial structure and the station area. In that area, the parking structure also has been topped off, and they're doing completion on that structure as well. The transit center is up towards the top of the screen, just to the right of the tracks, and the transit center is being constructed at this time. There will also be a surface parking lot across the street from that, and that's Berryessa Extension Way, which will become a city public street, but really extends from Berryessa Road and Mayberry Road, and will be the road that serves the station, and it will have actually dedicated bus lanes and connections into the garage, and also have bicycle facilities on it as well. Just actually let you know, this is actually the portion of the project we're really into, which is the systems portion. So we're pretty much mostly done with the civil work, and we're actually starting the systems work, and this is actually some of the factory testing that we're doing on some of the equipment that's being placed now into the station areas. Just a little bit update on this schedule. This is actually the same schedule you've been seeing. We do plan on reforecasting this schedule by the end of the year. To let you know, as you know, Warm Springs has not opened yet and is planning on opening sometime this fall. They were supposed to open last December. Right now, we've been able to mitigate any concerns we had with that, but as we reforecast, we'll actually find out whether they're, and if they open on, I wouldn't say on time, but depending on when they open, if it has an impact. So we plan on reforecasting the schedule towards the end of this year. But right now we're currently, and we still see us opening up in the fall of 2017. This is just the cost summary to date, what we have incurred. So we've incurred $1.5 billion out of a $2.4 million. We're still looking at a unallocated contingency of about $150 million. This will also be part of the schedule reforecasting, as we'll also reforecast the costs towards the end of the year, and that's something we promised the board come December. So we want to make sure we have a couple things are complete, and we'd like to know how our connections with Warm Springs goes, and then we'll be doing the reforecasting. Just real quickly on BART Silicon Valley Phase 2, we are looking at a single bore as a potential alternative to a twin bore for the tunnel, and that means it's a very large diameter tunnel. We actually took this to our policy working committee and discussed this, and we actually did a study to see if it's actually feasible. We actually moved forward with some additional questions and technical analysis in the area of station concepts, ventilation, emergency egress, and we'll probably see next month at the board requests to authorize a contract to be able to study those areas. It does reduce community impacts, but then again, there's other risks, and those are the things that we will have to weigh. And the environmental impacts are going along very well. We've submitted the second administrative draft to the FTA on June 28th. We did good comments. It was based on comments both from FTA and BART. We actually included a new option for Diridon Station to be a little closer and parallel to Stockton Street, and also added the single bore tunnel as an alternative. And I think we have another set of community working groups coming up in mid-September. And that concludes my presentation.
On this item, and that's Michael C. Forward, and you can speak right here. And Elaine's going to get you a mic. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Michael Tai. I've been waiting for the BART extension to happen for over 10 years, and I'm really glad it's finally happening. I'm pleased with the pace of construction, which is ahead of schedule and under budget, which I think is awesome. I want to give a shout out to Carolyn for her active role in doing that community outreach and communicating to all stakeholders about the progress of the project. See her around at various community events and public meetings, spreading the gospel. And I would like to highlight those two words, community outreach, that she's already spoken about. I think there's a lot more that can be done in this space to really make government connect with the public and let them know that the government really cares about their needs. For the BART extension, one important concept is taking transit to transit. And a lot of people are driving to BART right now. That's just how it is. I think it's a little unfortunate. And that causes a demand for a lot of parking, which is not the highest and best use of land near the BART station. So I think we should have a more flexible bus system, maybe with smaller buses and more frequent schedules that will make the BART stations more accessible and increase the ridership there.
Thank you, Nodia. And I have just one very small report. So I went to Philadelphia last week. There was an event there, Democratic Convention. And but the thing I wanted to share with all of you is that the folks at SEPTA were amazing. And the way they've integrated, it feels like very Jarrett Walker, like bus rapid transit. It was so easy to use. I mean, and you know, it was unusually safe because there was thousands of officers from all over the country. But I wanted to ask if we could, and I'll talk to Elaine about this. I'd love to send a letter to SEPTA on behalf of VTA, just congratulating them on the really flawless job they did, moving thousands and thousands of people that were new to the community. And in particular, I had one interaction with a bus driver that I got on the wrong bus because a convention volunteer put me on the wrong bus, and he wouldn't let me pay because I wasn't on the right bus, and then he got me to my connection. And the level of customer service was just really, it was really incredible. So, and so I wanted to share that with all of you. And also I'd like to send them a congratulations on our behalf. And I have that gentleman's name too, so he should get a pin from VTA at least. Maybe a hat.
Madam Chair. Here, may I suggest we also send a letter of congratulations to the Greater Cleveland Rapid Transit Authority, because they did an outstanding job, and all the newspapers talked about was how great Cleveland was able to move people.
So on to item 8.3, items of concern and referral to the administration. Do we have any? Seeing none, then I'm going to move to item, everything under item 8.4 is in your packet. We're now going to go to closed session. I just want to ask my colleagues not to leave. We only have, so bar the doors. Katie, bar the doors. Bar the doors, and we have 3 items. They're relatively brief, but we do need your voting. I want to thank everybody who came that's going to be leaving tonight. We really appreciated your participation, and the staff, thank you.
Thank you.